Imagine you are standing at the edge of a busy city street. Cars are rushing past, and the sidewalk is hard concrete. Most of us, if asked what is growing there, might point to a lonely tree or a few weeds pushing through the cracks. We see a world of gray and black, a world made of stone and steel. But what if I told you that you were actually standing in a massive, open-air grocery store? What if those weeds were actually ancient medicines, and the trees overhead were dripping with flavors you have never tasted? Most of us have become strangers to the very ground beneath our feet. We look at a park and see a place to sit, but we do not see a menu. We look at a garden and see decoration, but we do not see history. This gap between us and the land is not just a coincidence. It is the result of how we have been taught to live, eat, and think. We have been trained to believe that food is something that lives in a plastic box at the supermarket. We assume that if we want something special or different, we have to look to a far-off country. But the most exotic and powerful flavors might be growing right outside your front door, waiting for you to remember their names. To understand this, we have to look at the surface concept of what we call a diet. For most of us in the modern world, a diet is defined by what we buy. We think of calories, vitamins, and prices. We think of global brands and fast solutions. This is an industrialized way of eating. It is a system that values speed and sameness over everything else. Because of this, our tongues have become bored. We are used to the same few flavors: salt, processed sugar, and heavy fats. We have forgotten the sharp bite of wild bergamot or the deep, earthy sweetness of true wild rice. This surface view makes us feel like we are consumers rather than participants. It makes us feel like the land is just a backdrop for our busy lives, rather than a living partner that feeds us. However, there is a hidden assumption beneath this modern way of life. We often assume that the way we eat today is just the natural progress of time. We think that we moved away from the land because supermarkets are better or more efficient. But the truth is much more complex. In many parts of the world, especially in North America, the loss of traditional food was not an accident. It was a calculated plan. For generations, people were intentionally separated from their traditional knowledge. They were told that their ancient foods were not important or that they were illegal to harvest. Children were sent to schools where they were forced to forget the plants their grandparents loved. This was an attempt to erase a culture by erasing its flavors. When we realize this, we see that what we eat is a political choice. Every time we choose to ignore the native plants of our region, we are continuing a story of silence. But every time we choose to learn about a wild onion or a local berry, we are performing an act of restoration. This brings us to a structural pattern of connection. If you look at the names given to plants by people who have lived on the land for thousands of years, you see a different way of relating to the world. A plant is not just a scientific name or a weed. It is a bushy little squirrel tail. It is wound medicine. It is a relative. This pattern of naming shows a deep intimacy. It suggests that humans and plants are part of the same family. In this system, you do not just take what you want. You harvest with intention. You take only a little, ensuring that the plant nation continues to thrive. This is the opposite of the extraction model we see in big industry. It is a model of relationship. It is about understanding that if the plants are healthy, the people are healthy. When we reframe our perspective this way, food becomes more than just fuel. It becomes information. It is a story on a plate. When you eat a bison steak seasoned with sumac and maple sugar, you are not just tasting protein and spice. You are tasting the early summer of a specific valley. You are tasting the history of a people who survived against all odds. This kind of eating is not about going backward or living in a museum. It is about taking the deep wisdom of the past and applying it to the future. It is about asking how we can use ancient knowledge to solve modern problems like food deserts or poor nutrition. It is about building a world where a child can choose between a burger and a traditional native dish and find both easily available. Applying this to our daily lives starts with a simple change in how we walk. The next time you are in a park or even just walking down a sidewalk, stop for a second. Look at the plants that are growing there. You do not have to be an expert to start. You just have to be curious. You can start by learning the name of one local tree or one wild flower. When you know a name, you begin to care. You start to see the resilience of a plant growing out of a stone wall as something to be admired. You might find that you never feel alone when you are outside because you are surrounded by plant friends and allies. This connection changes how you think about history and culture. It makes you realize that every city has a secret layer of life that was there long before the concrete was poured. We can also think about where our food dollars go. We can choose to support local producers who are trying to bring back these old flavors. We can learn to cook with ingredients that belong to the land we are standing on. This is a way to take back power. If a community can grow its own food and understand its own environment, it becomes much more independent. It can control its own future. This is a journey of healing, not just for the land, but for our own spirits. We have been disconnected for too long, and the path back to the land is paved with flavor and memory. It is a slow, calm process of relearning. It involves sitting in canoes to harvest rice or crushing a leaf to smell its pineapple scent. It is about honoring the ancestors while building something new for the children who are not yet born. Every meal is a chance to decide what kind of future we want to create. Every bite is an opportunity to remember a piece of the world that we almost lost. We are all living on land that has a voice. We are all eating food that has a lineage. The more we listen to that voice and respect that lineage, the more we find our own place in the great cycle of life. We are not just visitors on this planet, we are part of its metabolism. We are part of its story. Let us be the ones who choose to tell that story with respect, with flavor, and with a deep love for the ground that sustains us. We can change the future every single day by simply being aware of the gifts that are already all around us. When we look outside, we should see more than just scenery. We should see a bounty that has been waiting for us to notice it for a very long time. If you were to walk out of your house right now and look at the very first green thing you saw growing in the dirt, what would happen to your sense of belonging if you knew that plant had a name, a history, and a purpose that was connected directly to you?